schools and to different companies as well. And last but not least, we'll hear from our amazing panelists about what are the tips and insights to essentially nail your interview. And now we understand that with COVID-19, a lot of things have moved to virtual setting. What are the differences between going for an interview physically versus virtually? And we'll hear about all these tips and advice from our amazing lineup of panelists. And as Tasha mentioned earlier, we're gonna have our Q&A session towards the end. So please stick around and we're gonna have your questions answered towards the end of the session. And I would like to start the presentation with this favorite meme of mine. So a couple of years ago when I was still studying in school, the one thing that I always avoid or like dreadfully avoid every single time is actually when I'm bumping into like an insurance agent. And believe me or not, I actually bump into them quite often, even in schools. There was one day that I bumped into an insurance agent just outside my exam hall. And that's like the last thing I want to talk to after exams, right? And I'm pretty sure you guys feel the same way. I think, and then I reflected then, I was telling myself, I will never become like any insurance agent. I will never become like a salesperson, just because of the fact that the whole experience scares me off. Like I just feel that insurance agents just try to sell stuff every single day. And I'm just like one of the victims trying to avoid them, just like any other Singaporeans or like any other students out there. And that's when I realized and vouched to myself that hell no, I will never become a salesperson. I will not become a salesperson ever. But guess what? Like 2 years later, I'm currently working at Salesforce. I'm a solution engineer and I work very closely with my sales counterpart in a sales team. And I realized that, oh, this is like so different from what I thought. And not only that, I think based on my experience talking to students, talking to people and young professionals, I realized these very unpleasant truths that I would like to share with all of you today. That every single one of us is essentially a salesperson. Have you ever imagined or remembered when was the last time you had to negotiate to someone? When was the last time you had to persuade or convince your friends to go to this particular restaurant that you love the most? Or when was the last time you ask your parents for extra money to buy your latest iPhone? So all these things in life that we have been doing is essentially the traits of a typical salesperson. We actually negotiate, we make compromises, we trade our knowledge, we trade our experiences, our ideas. We try to like sell them to other people and convince them to buy that. And not only that, I think the scariest part of it all is that realizing that the reason why I didn't want to become a salesperson was because I really am scared of rejection. The moment that you see an insurance agent, you just want to like walk away from them, that's like the sign of rejections. And when I was talking to students and me myself going through the job hunting process, I realized that rejections are everywhere. And when I'm trying to sell my skills, selling my experience, selling myself as in values and characters of myself to potential employers, I am becoming a salesperson. I'm trying to sell whatever I have to this company that I want to be part of. And that's when I realized that every one of us is essentially a walking salesperson, especially in a job hunting process. And I want you all today to accept that fact. And at the same time, we are here to help you to make this transition so much easier. We're trying to help you be a better salesperson of yourself. We want to make you realize that you have the knowledge, you have the experience, you have the potential to land a role in your dream company and facing all these rejections at the same time. And so, hello everyone, my name is Irene. As I've mentioned earlier, I'm currently working at Salesforce as a solution engineer. So TLDR, what is a solution engineer? I'm essentially a technical consultant in the pre-sales team. So I'm helping customers to find a IT solution that are tailored to their business requirements. If that sounds too chim, essentially I'm trying to like sell solutions to customers, and that's it. But what surprised people the most was that the fact I didn't come from any IT background. if you take a look at my internship stints, I was focusing a lot more on research, marketing, a bit of like BD as well during my 3 years internship experience in school. And I didn't even come from any school of computing. I actually graduated from the School of Political Science. I was doing global studies, which is essentially a liberal arts subject in NUS. And what exposed me, or like what opens the door for me to join Salesforce, is essentially having to having had done like all these 3 tips of LinkedIn, building your LinkedIn connections, crafting your resume, and nailing your interviews. And I believe that these 3 are also the keys of making you, all of you today, successful salesperson to sell yourself to your future employers. But enough talking about me. I also would like to introduce you to the amazing line of panelists today. And the first one being Sevri. So Sevri is currently an enterprise technical specialist at Microsoft. And recently, he just took in a pet kitten at home, and her name is Siri. We have been like going all obsessed and crazy about his kitten because she's just so cute, and she likes to make these like cameo appearances every now and then during our meetings. And I hope she's gonna make one today. But I would also like to invite Sefri to introduce more about himself. How has his journey been like transitioning from the Bachelor of Commerce a few years ago to where he is now as an enterprise technical specialist at Microsoft? Sefri, please.
I think to your point, I hope not. She's asleep behind me, and I hope it stays that way. So hi again, everyone. That was a great introduction, Irene. My name is Sevri, and as Irene mentioned before, way back in my past, I did a Bachelor of Commerce in Accounting and Finance. And that was a 4-year course. And I think probably within my time at university, I'd have this one email that I would read almost every week. And that email, and for anyone here who has heard about this or something similar in terms of emails, I want you to write down, I've heard of it, in the chat down below. So the email I'm going to talk to you about is something that's etched in my brain, which is, thank you for your completion of the online interview at XYZ company. We appreciate the time and effort that you've taken in terms of deciding with the current stage of the process. If you'd like, you can visit our website, and we wish you all the best in your studies and securing a position of your choice. Who has heard of that many a times? If you heard of it, put it in the chat, because I feel that there's a lot of people that resonate with that. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I got this email from just accounting firms. I'd get that same email 3 years in a row from the likes of PwC, EY, for every single time that have a quarterly or a half yearly recruitment. And so I wanted to go through and share my journey across where I come from an accounting aspect, all the way to, as you can see here, I moved into a role within marketing with a non-marketing degree, and then moved into the field of tech, which have you seen with solution engineer at Salesforce, as well as a technical specialist at Microsoft as well. So I'm glad to be here with you today with some amazing panelists who also come from a degree agnostic background, and very keen to also hear the stories of everyone else.
Thank you, Sefri. We're so happy to have you here. And of course, we still have 2 more amazing panelists as well. Next, we'll have Trivida Tiffany Munataputri. So Trivida joins us from AWS. She's currently a marketing specialist at AWS. But I've heard great things about Trivida when she told me about her whole experience applying and submitting resume during her section about resume. And she'll share with you all the amazing things that she has done and what actually helped her to land her dream role at AWS right now. But Trivida actually also came from the Bachelor of Commerce, and I would like to invite Trivida to just share a little bit about her experience so far coming from commerce and actually landing a role in AWS as a marketing specialist. So Trivida, please.
Yeah, thanks, Irene. So hey, everyone. My name is Trivida. I am a marketing specialist at AWS in Australia, New Zealand. I work for the public sector team, so that's mainly like government, education, cultural institutions, healthcare, and all. Prior to this role, actually, this is my first full-time role after I graduated uni, and it took me 1.5 years before I get here. But prior to that, I did a number of internships, a few of which were at Vogue, Performix, Census. So it was a wider range of different companies of different nature, some agencies, some publications. So I graduated with a marketing and management degree, Bachelor of Commerce here at University of Melbourne. But afterwards, but during that time, I did a number of different internships, some of which are displayed here. But a lot of things that has to do with arts. So whether it be fashion, performing arts, film. So it was around that scope, and I was so determined that I was going to be doing something there. But you come along different paths. I was first introduced to just data monetization and everything through some uni consulting firms. And then afterwards, trying to pave my way through and learn more about it. So yeah, just like everyone else here, I'm happy to share a little bit of my experience and memes and help you all go through your career journey, even though I am also at the start of it. But yeah, thanks so much, Irene.
Thank you, Trivita. We're so excited to hear about your insights later. And last, definitely but not least, is Astrina. So Astrina actually graduated from NBS 1.5 years ago. And she currently is a campus recruitment officer at Shopee. And I personally have known Astrina for the past, I would say, 9, almost 10 years by now. And it has really been an amazing experience knowing her and see her grow so much. And again, I think back then, no one really know whatever we're gonna do in life, right? 10 years ago, who would have thought that we're gonna be where we are today? But I've really seen Astrina grow, and she always shares all her fantastic experience and life at Shopee, especially about her own interns, her own full-timers and grad programs that she has organized and brought these people into the program. And that's why I think that she'll be the best person to share with you the insights and the tips on what makes a great candidate for an interview. So Astrina, I also wanted you to share a little bit about yourself, your journey from NBS all the way to landing a role at Shopee as a campus recruitment officer.
Thanks, Irene, for the introduction. Like what she mentioned, I was from NBS and I was specializing in HR, so not marketing, like what you guys are specializing in. And I think throughout my years in universities, I really enjoyed it. So treasure it while you can, guys. And throughout my university, I also picked up several internships. I was interning more towards the MNCs kind of companies, still within HR. So I had an internship with Aon for rewards consulting, and then with Johnson & Johnson for HR analytics. And I eventually got into Shopee. Definitely not an MNC. It's a very exciting tech startup-like company. And I think some of you guys might have seen me talking before if you have attended our webinars or even, I see some familiar names that I might have called you guys for an internship or something. But yeah, I hope to share a little bit more about the interview process and how you guys can prepare early since your university life, be it for your internship or for your full-time positions as well. Yeah, I think I'll just save more of my sharing to later.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Astrina. So yeah, I think without further ado, I'm just going to pass the time to Sevri. Sevri is going to share with you more about his LinkedIn, his tips and advice on building LinkedIn connections. So a disclaimer, Sevri actually has almost 2,000 followers on LinkedIn. But I think what entices people the most about his profile is the fact that he creates amazing videos. And when I say amazing, it's super duper cool. The fact that someone all the way in Sydney, all the way in the States came up to him and say hey, I've watched your video on LinkedIn and I know who you are. You're working at Salesforce. Can I have a coffee chat with you? That is already so amazing, right? So I'm not gonna steal the spotlight for Sevri. Sevri, please come on board and tell us all your stories and experience so far, and please share the tips to everyone here in the room of how to build authentic LinkedIn connections, because we want to make sure that everyone is aware of what LinkedIn is for and why is LinkedIn so crucial in the job hunting process as well. So Sevri, please.
I wanted to start off with a disclaimer, Irene, you're very kind. I think it may be a bit too much. But yes, I wanted to share my insights on what it looks like in leveraging your LinkedIn. So if you click on the next slide, maybe before we start going through, I would love to hear from everyone just to get an idea and a gauge of where you are currently doing your degree. So probably everyone's doing at market at, was it NTU? But can you please write down in the comments in the chat what degree you're currently doing? Because as you've heard in the panelists, everyone there has different university degrees and different backgrounds. So we'd love to hear how diverse everyone is. That should show exactly which side of the business you're coming from or which side of IT you're hearing from. So we've got a couple of different ones, marketing, business. There's a couple from IT as well. As you can see, everyone has a range of different backgrounds. And the reason why I'm sharing what everyone's doing is to give an idea that you can come from whatever background you are currently doing and move into tech in a role that fits perfectly for you. Now, what you're seeing in this image, I want to tell you a bit of a story. I remember probably second year into my university, my bachelor's, I was at a Google recruitment event, and I was literally that person standing there. I'm an introvert at heart. I don't like to have a huge group of people I'm talking to. I was usually shy. I'm still shy to this day. Now, I remember I was walking up with a pizza on my right hand. Here in Australia, in Melbourne, you usually have finger foods as a way to network with other people. And I had it in my hand about to approach to the recruiter. And I took one step forward as another person left their conversation. And the first thing I said was, "Hey, how are you? What are you currently doing at Google?" And they were talking for about 20 seconds, maybe gave a quick elevator pitch until someone came from around the corner, basically stole the conversation. They said, "Hey, are you this person's friend from Google?" And they said, yeah. I know this person. How do you know? And they were like, "Oh, well, I was in uni with them for almost all my university years." And they started this conversation. And I was there sitting with my pizza going, do I keep eating it or do I keep trying to budge in? I don't know what to do. And I just stood there awkwardly. And so these events may or may not be for a lot of people. But what I want to show and tell you is how you can build a more genuine connection that can help elaborate your network and get you to a position that may be different to what you may be assuming as what a networking would look like. And so, Irene, if you can go next. What I wanted to go through is how you can build a connection, a genuine connection. As that conversation you saw beforehand, they had a mutual, they had someone that they knew and they could talk about. And this is all about building a connection, is finding that level of mutuality, whether it be around a university alumni, whether it be an organization you won before, or whether it be someone that you knew together. A lot of the times you build a sense of connection through this commonality. Now, we'll also be going through how you can then build a personalized message for sending it to someone so that you can build that initial rapport, as well as then being able to catch up with them over the likes of Zoom, over the likes of Google Hangouts, and then continue to build that relationship and stay connected. Next, Irene, why do you want to do all this, right? Number one is growing your network. When you start to think about it, you probably heard this many a times, I have to grow my network, I have to meet more different people. And that's true, because most of the time for you to get into a role, you have to have someone that you may know, you feel like you trust them at the first place to move into the company, move into the role. You feel this sense of belief that the role is right for you. So being able to grow your network, grow your knowledge is something that you should be able to focus on. Number two is being able to share industry knowledge. If anyone's here been in the interview, how many times have you been asked, how much do you know about this role? How much do you know about this company? That's basically one of the main interview questions. That's a big bulk of what you would get asked in a lot of different companies. It's probably what every company would ask. And to counter those questions, this is where you learn of other people. You learn off people within your network, understand their industry knowledge. And what you're seeing there is probably one of the best advice I've ever got in my career. You network with other people to understand what metaphors and analogies they use in their company and their role. Why is this important? So I think a a few months ago, I had a friend who was also applying to Salesforce when I was back at Salesforce. And he would give me an idea what a CRM was. He just basically told me that the CRM is managing interactions as well as past and potential customers, yada, yada, yada. Basically a Wikipedia viewpoint on what a CRM was. And I told him, well, think of it this way. From like at Salesforce, what they do is provide you with the building blocks, the Lego blocks for you to then cultivate however they want the business, whether they want to build the building blocks for marketing engagements, whether they want to do it for customer service. You're basically providing them the software to build however they want in terms of they engage their customers. I provided him this analogy. He used it in his interview and he got through the first stage without breeze and they were very satisfied. So this is the knowledge you get to learn from other people, the metaphors they use, the analogies that you would then get to surprise other people with through building a connection. And as well, it's a good entry into the field. Any one of us here have basically done referrals in the past of people that you may like to have, and this is where you build your connection to also get into the field. But most of all, it's about building a genuine connection at the core of everything that you do when you're networking. So if you can go next, Irene. Now, that was why do you do this? How do you do this is what I'm going to go through next. And as you can see here, I've basically taken Irene's profile and I want to, let's say, build a relationship and report so that I can understand, share knowledge and share my journey as well as understand hers. As you can see here, I've gone through and seen, have we have any mutual connections? Have we done anything in the past beforehand? Even as something as basic as, have we been in the same organization, MarkeTHINK, or anything around being in the same uni? You try to find this commonality point to build a relationship off. So once you've gone through, done your analysis of their profile and understand who they are, what they've done, you then want to be able to create a personalized message. So Irene, just next slide. Like the example, as I said before, my story, they knew they had a mutual friend and that was their introduction in terms of the communication with Google. And the same goes with any personal invites. I want to hear from everyone, just as a quick poll. Have anyone here used a personal invite? If you have, write yes. If you haven't, it's okay. Just say no. We've got a few yeses coming through. Oh, that's great. I think everyone knows their stuff now. As you can see here, the great thing about having a personal invite is being able to create this initial rapport. It's always about first impressions. It's like comparing doing a handshake that's great and firm as opposed to no handshake at all. This is where you build that first great impression. And most of the time, 9 out of 10 of my personalized invites gets accepted. And this is always going to be a great communication starter. As you can see here, we've got a quick formula that we can provide in terms of the way that you want to start that. So if you press next, Irene, this works on a variety of different levels. So as basic as someone in a company or even someone who has a lot more influence. What I'm showing you here is someone that I actually connected with who was both a LinkedIn and a YouTube influencer that had about, I think he has like 860K followers now or subscribers on YouTube. And I use the same formula. The formula that I used here, as you can see, was more so around a commonality of videos. I love making videos. He loved making videos. And that was the way that I began that relationship. You have this commonality point. It doesn't have to be any particular hobbies, but again, as I mentioned, you've got the company, education, and highlights. You've got maybe specific experience, could be the same uni club, could be the same job that you've done beforehand, as well as any volunteering organization. There's a variety of different ways you can build a relationship through having a sense of commonality. Now, how do you do this? Take this to the next level. You've now built the rapport. You now have a connection. This is where you want to build that rapport even further through catching up. If you can go next slide, Irene. As you can see here, we've got a more elaborative message. I've actually asked them, hey, do you know we can catch up over the likes of Zoom for us to converse over XYZ? This is all about asking the why, because most of the time, some people would say, how are you? And leave it as it is. And that's probably the most frightening thing if you start to receive a message because you don't know where the conversation is leading. And so this is where you begin to write down exactly why you want to meet up, why you want to catch up. You might have a focus on wanting to be in tech. You might have an excitement of doing a specific hobby together or a project together. And this is where you start off by asking the why very quickly and have the ask at the end. Within this email, I basically said, did you know that we can talk about more about videos and collaborate? And he even said yes. And I was on a call with him the next day. This is the power of being able to show the ask at the very beginning. Now, this can also work not just in terms of connections in the company and connections in commonality, but as well with recruiters. If you go next, Irene, based on what I've done in the past, I've been able to get interviews with Google and the likes of TikTok, even at Microsoft, just by touching base with the recruiters through the same methodology. Now, as you can see here, I've identified what type of recruiter they are. Most importantly, I think Astrina can probably talk about, there's different type of recruiters, whether they're technical, non-technical recruiters, there's role-specific recruiters, and you want to make sure you find the right one to build a relationship with and also help them fulfill their role, which is to fulfill the batch of roles they have. So as you can see here, I messaged one of the recruiters for TikTok saying, hey, I also have experience with the CRM. I wanted to see if I can help you to identify whether you can fill in a specific role. And basically within that week, I got an interview with TikTok. Of course, I wasn't with them today because you can probably tell my experience, but that would also have been a fun pathway to go to, making TikTok videos every day. So this is a way for you to build a relationship, whether it be with your network or whether it be a recruiter. But most of all, a lot of people are thinking, what happens if they reject me? What happens if they say no, don't reply? Now, I want you to think holistically this. How many rejections have you got in the past and you've just gotten from, oh, no, I couldn't get the role, to, oh, another one. Okay, I'll go on with it. If you press next, Irene, there's 3 possibilities with this. Number 1 is a response saying yes. Great. Awesome. They replied, let's schedule a one-on-one. Can you do this specific date? And then you begin to have a catch up. The second response is, I'm sorry, I can't catch up soon. I'm very busy at the moment. And that's fine. That just means it's a redirection to another date, but at least you've started to build that rapport. And of course, third of all is no response. We've seen no responses in the past. There's this terminology called, ghosting. It's okay. So this is the great part about it, is you are able to build a connection through having that initial response. And then if they respond, great. You then get to build your network, grow your knowledge of the industry, have an entry point to tech that you saw beforehand, as well as build a genuine connection. And so this is about building that connection. How do you maintain it? Let's say you've had that catch up, great. You had a coffee catch up, you had a catch up over Zoom. How do you maintain it over time? Next slide, Irene. This is where you then share what you've been doing through LinkedIn. And I emphasize how important this is, because nowadays LinkedIn is where people look towards when they look at your profile, your experiences, and your personality as well. You have a physical CV, you look at it and you think, well, do I know Trivita on the CV? Do I know a personality? No. And this is where LinkedIn can help open up that personality, whether it be a video, whether it be a post that you've shared. This is a way for people to know how you've grown over time, as well as what you've been doing. It's like talking to a relative that you haven't seen in a while. They may get their information around gossip from your other relatives, what usually happens with my family as well, particularly being Indonesian. It always goes around, but that just means you're drip feeding them what you've been doing over time. And they could be asking, hey, I saw you did an update on your recent role, a recent certification, recent opportunities you've done at a university group. I've seen what you've done. It's amazing. And when you start to share what you've been doing, you then get to not only maintain those connections, but you then get to amplify it. Now, on the very far image, that's just a normal post that I get. It's about a few thousand impressions for something that might have just like a few dozen of likes. But that starts to amplify when someone like, let's say, any of the panelists starts to like it, starts to comment on it. You then get an amplification of the network. If Irene has like 1,000, 2,000 networks, connections in a network, and they like it, that gives you greater exposure to different people. And so that's how you begin to maintain that connection, as well as start to build your branding around it, which is an entire different conversation as well. So that was a quick glimpse around how you can start to build a genuine connection of the likes of LinkedIn. Again, the best answer you can get is yes. The worst answer is a no. And then start to build a genuine connection as a way to build your network, grow your knowledge, get into the field as well. So I'd also like to provide it to the floor as well. I think anyone, Irene, Triv, or Astrina, your experiences of using LinkedIn as a way to build your knowledge and grow your network?
I think Trivita mentioned before that she was connected to like a few people on LinkedIn when she was applying for jobs. I want to like hear from her. What's her experience like connecting to like those recruiters, those employees in certain companies, and whether it has helped her to like move on or like move forward in her job hunting process.
Yeah, well, certainly not to Severi's degree, of course. I think, yeah, it's really about like maintaining both like a genuine but yet professional relationship, but also it's a way to get connected not only with the new people, of course, like all these talent acquisitions, but also like your past managers. You'll never know. Sometimes your past connection actually have opportunities for you, and it's about reconnecting with them as well. I think meeting who you want to know more about where they live is actually very important in terms of which social channels do they operate the most. For example, how I got my marketing internship with Vogue was actually, I came to like this one event. So I've been stalking this one editor on Instagram like crazy, and I stalked her LinkedIn as well. I think she saw that I'm not on Premium, right? So, so I've been stalking her, and I sent through her message, and she didn't respond. So I came to one of the events and actually saw her in person, had a quick chat to her, but I spoke directly to the editor-in-chief. And then from there, they just sort of offered me an internship and then meet them again at the office. But afterwards, she saw me like multiple times. So you have to think of the touch points just when you're marketing something or when you're marketing yourself. You do not only use one channel, or you do not meet them just once or talk about the same thing. You need those multiple touch points, whether it be live events or coming to one of these events like right now you're coming to a virtual event because we see you. So yeah, really understanding which platform do they operate in the most. And I ended up like sort of catching up with her over coffee even after I finished my internship. And you know, I don't even talk to her on LinkedIn. I talk to her on Instagram. So it's really finding out where they like work best with. And yeah, so I think on the follow-up from Sevri, of course.
Thanks, Triv. But it's like a very nice segue to like the next segment, which is yours on resume, because you mentioned that you actually managed to land an interview at Vogue. You even like secured a full-time position at AWS, but even in between, you were like sending out like tons and tons of resume to your potential employers. And of course, there are like some things that work, some things that don't work, and we want to like find out more from you. What have actually worked for you so far, and is it true that all these creative resumes are still having like the trend, like popularity, like out there with like all those big MNCs like Disney and BuzzFeed? Like, please share with us.
Yeah, sure. Cool. So I'll get cracking at it. So I think so let's, if you go to the next slide, so we are gonna go from regular Squidward to a more chiseled, handsome Squidward. So essentially, we're not trying to eliminate the character here, but really trying to chisel our way into making your resume more refined, and really everything that Sevri mentioned on your LinkedIn page, really trying to package that up into a single page for an employer to see like, oh, this is what she's good at, this is what, because it's a very quick glimpse. So we want to make sure that we get their attention. So if we go to the next slide, Irene. I'll share a little bit on what I did. So in the left side, I applied to different companies. In all honesty, I applied to over 300 jobs right after I graduated from uni. And a few of which I got a little bit more creative with how I created my CV, because, you know, you see stuff on the internet where they're like, I created a website for Airbnb and I created an animation for Disney. So I'm like, I'm gonna create a PR kit for Disney. So I ended up creating my own story, took the help of my sister who's an illustrator, as well as my friend who's a typographer, package it up and created an entire story and CV that's, you know, related to my personal experience. So I created that. I had an old employer so my former employer knew the director from Disney. We sort of like, I sort of hunted her down on LinkedIn and messaged her a few times. And then a year later, I sent her this package. And I delivered it straight to the office, but somehow they didn't receive it. And it broke my heart. But anyways, what happened afterwards was that she actually introduced me to the HR manager. So I did get like a tiny foot in the door, but I'll follow up with that the next time. So on the bottom here, we have BuzzFeed. Seeing the role was for a junior content producer. So I ended up creating like an Instagram story, and I highlighted some of my responses addressing the key selection criteria, one of which was proficient in Photoshop. And I Photoshopped myself with Ryan Gosling and a bookcase, just because that's my proficiency level. So, and then, but I also created like a video and all. So I tried different methods and different channels and mediums, all of which actually, a number of which got a few initial responses, but do they convert? That is what matters, right? So if we click next, Irene. That's what got me in AWS. Like, if you see the difference, they're like, what? You literally only have a circle behind your name. But that is what matters. Like, what matters is actually trying to be more strategic with the way you address these key selection criteria and making sure you know who your target audience and talent recruiter is. So if we go next. So I feel like a number of you would feel like, oh God, like you glowed up so much. It's like when you graduated high school and you felt like you glowed up, and still nobody wants you, right? But what we're trying to find here is ways in which we can create a better CV and glow it up in a way that makes someone want you. So if we go next, there are essentially 6 components that you need to look at when you're building your resume. The first one is definitely your layout. Despite anything, layouts do matter. You need to make it easy for the readers to go through all of the content there, because obviously recruiters go through a number of resumes each day. So you want to make sure that you make it easy for them. It's just the way like when you're reading through a website. So make sure you have a consistent formatting and styling. Make sure you use the right colors as well. I've heard a few recruiters have told me that a punch of color would be nice, but nothing like rainbowy word art style, nothing too avant-garde. Yeah. Second is length. Be clear and succinct in what you're trying to say. If you are concise, you get to the point, that's what they want. We'll get a little bit into on like what kind of content after this slide. But yeah, making sure that you have that sort of storytelling and achievement-oriented vibe, making sure you have the numbers ready, and a clear like performance indicator. What's your KPI? Did you achieve it? So stuff like that. We're going to dive into that in the next slide. So yeah, if you see on the right side here, we have context. You can, I think this is the best part. Like when you're applying to the company, to different companies, you need to tailor your resume to the job description. So instead of it being like, say I'm a marketing graduate and I want to apply for solutions engineer, I wouldn't highlight the parts of me where I'm like, oh, I do film and I do blah. Yes, you can mention all of those, but you want to gear more towards like, what is a solutions engineer's role? How do I sort of tackle all of these criterias and make them sure that like I'm the right fit for the culture and the role. Yeah, what style, so clear fonts and colors. Yeah, that's basically sort of like related to what we mentioned in the layouts, and making sure you have the right file name. So don't make the mistakes of, you know, writing your name and then resume underscore Disney when you're applying to AWS. So making sure to double check that. So next slide, Irene. Yeah, so we're going to go through some best practices here. So for example, yes, do it in chronological order. You would, what I usually do is actually I put the most recent one on top, but you can always do it like the other way around as well. That's fine. But just making sure that they're in chronological order. When you're writing your content, yeah, so you, same with everything, you start with your role name, where you did your internship or where you did your work at, timelines, and then making sure you put that in bullet points, maybe even like just 1 or 2 or 3 bullet points, creating some like powerful action verbs. For example, here, these led, so you know that, oh, she's a leader. And then your achievements, what did you do? What is your KPI and how did you measure against it? For example, if I created a website, I would like, whoa, real viewership increased by 35%. But what was your like your initial KPI? You should have a good idea of like the benchmarks and yeah, and getting to know how you can achieve that. Numbers and achievements is actually very important, especially for roles that are in the tech industry, because since it's a lot has to do with performance. So if we go next. Okay, I love this. So Irene actually helped create these slides, but these are like the how a resume would look like before. So for example, on top here, we write, create models for a team to read finances more efficiently. But what type of models, which team members, how were the finances more efficient? Make sure you become critical of the things that you write. How are you reading through them? What does it mean? So things like that. So working with the sales team, with multiple teams on role communities. So who are you working with? What did you do with them? What are the things that you achieved with them? Or what did you help them achieve? So yeah, a lot of this stuff here are the questions that you need to ask yourself when you're writing these things. So point, example, explain. Just think of it as P. That is a bad example of P. So next one. So when we ask all of these questions and we use the method that we looked at before, using action verbs, using the performance indicators, quantifiables, responsibilities, and results, you get like a more succinct, like it's actually not that much longer than what you initially provided, but it provides like a great like insight to what you actually did. So models, oh, develop what models? Oh, we develop revenue models. Who is it for? It's for 100 customer success executives. And then there's like the numbers here. We love numbers. You have 100, 5 million, 150 sales account leads, 50 plus products. So all of these numbers are actually what recruiters look at a lot. So you want to make sure you capture all that data throughout your entire internship, so then you have something to provide in your CV. Great. So we go next. I think we are going to go to Astrina after this. But Irene, happy for you to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think before we move on to like Astrina's part, I want to ask Astrina as well to just jump in and like share her insights. I just want to like ask this like controversial question. How many like seconds or possibly minutes does recruiters spend reading your resume?
Okay, on average, I would say 20 seconds. Yeah, to put it in a context, I deal with like, a few hundreds of resumes every day. And that's because of, I would say the nature of the tech companies that a lot of people are applying. It's a very competitive pool, I'll just be honest. And like recruiters like us, we have to deal with hundreds of resumes that comes in every week. But of course, for certain roles that's probably like more specific or more senior, we will spend more time looking at it. But for internships, yeah, honestly, it's like 20 seconds.
Have you ever received like creative resumes like what Trivita did for BuzzFeed and Disney before?
Yeah, quite a few. I think that's quite a risk. Let's say if we do it like very creatively and you do it well, and it happens that the recruiter likes it, you will probably get a call. But sometimes what happens is, first of all, the formatting will go messed up if we don't save it as PDF. And that is a really annoying thing for recruiters. I think basically, yeah, like what Trivita mentioned, any kind of plain look of resume works as long as you craft it in the right order, and it's like the font that you use is visible. Because sometimes I see resumes that is in gray and like I can't even read, so I have to really bring myself to take a look at the resume, and it like I have to put additional effort on it, and we see hundreds of resume and it gets us tired. So yeah.
So it seems like our job here is not just to send in a resume, but like send something that makes our recruiters' life so much easier, because we want to make sure that they still want to read our resume in the first place, right? Yeah, so I think it's a good transition for Astrina to just stay on the line and like share with us your experience having to like groom your like incoming interns, like potential graduate like trainees as well, to come to Shopee. Like, how's the interview tips and advice have changed now that things have moved virtually? I mean, it's not completely, and we might potentially go back to physical interviews again, but what have changed, what have remained the same? What are the tips for these interviewees to essentially stay on top of their game and nail all these interview questions with their potential employers? So Astrina, please.
All right, thanks, Irene. Yeah, so maybe before I begin my sharing, I want to ask a question to all of you guys. So yeah, you can see the question over here. What are some common interview questions that you get? And please help to type the kind of questions they received via the chat box, and then we will take a look at it later. Yeah, be it for like your job interview, internship, full-time, or even for your CCAs as well. You can just type them down. Thank you so much for those who have typed them. So maybe as we are waiting for people to think and like trying to remember what kind of questions they get, I want to share a little bit about 2 uncommon questions that I received before. And I got it when I was interviewing for one of my internship positions. And the question is actually, what is your most favorite moment or time in your university life? And the second one is, what is your least favorite moment or time in university life? So I wasn't expecting those questions at all, because it sounds so easy in a way. It's like, oh, it's something that you ask to your friends when you are catching up after like a year, but it's a job interview. So but now it's actually one of my favorite questions to ask, and I'll share with you guys more later why. So, okay, let's take a look at the chat box now. I see some of like, tell me about yourself. Yes, that's very common. Tell me about a time when you overcame a challenge. Yeah, that's one of more common, I would say, behavioral questions as well. Why do you want to join a company? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Why should we hire you? Similarly, what sets you apart from other candidates, and why you deserve this role? Okay, and then what can you bring to the company? How are applicant shortlist? Oh, okay, that is another question for me, I think. I'll probably answer that later. And then tell me about a time when you failed. Okay, similar to the challenges one. What type of egg would you be if you are an egg? Okay, I'm not sure if that's common, but that's a very interesting question. And then, yeah, tell me about a time when you had a conflict with your colleague and how you overcame it. Okay, that's quite a variety of questions that you guys submitted. If you do think of any other questions, be it common or uncommon, feel free to type down in the chat as well. Yeah, so I think these questions are like quite, yeah, I've seen them quite often. I've been asked that way as well. And well, you guys can collate all these questions for your preparation for the next interview. Yeah, you don't have to, Google all the common questions that people ask in the interview. You can actually collate these from your own friends. So yeah, good job for that. Yeah, so maybe if we move on to the next slide. So how do I think we should prepare ourselves to when we go for an interview is to first understand about ourselves. So rather than thinking about all these questions that they can potentially ask, we should first of all reflect on ourselves. And while I was preparing these slides, I thought of these 4 Ps. It is for those of you who studied business, it's not your marketing 4 Ps like product, price, promotion, place. It's just a 4 Ps that I came up with randomly. So let me go through with you one by one. So first of all is personality. Personality is really about those quizzes that you took, maybe like MBTI, Big 5 personality, DISC, or other types of personality, what do you call it? Matrix. Yeah. It's really about how you define yourself, like how you see yourself in terms of your personality. Are you an extrovert? Are you actually someone who's agreeable? There's this term of like conscientiousness. Are you actually paying attention to a lot of details? Are you an organized person? Are you more creative? Are you flexible? How do you handle pressure? And all these things are very important components about yourself that you should be aware of. Why you need to know about that is really when you're answering a question, you will be able to focus your answer to what you will do at that situation. So if you don't know whether I'm like creative or I'm more of a traditional kind of person, I follow by the rules, I follow procedures. And then when you were thrown a question that asks like, oh, what would you do in this kind of situation? Then you might not be sure about what you would do, and recruiters can tell that from the start. Yeah, so that's the first P. And then the second one is about your preference. So preference is basically like a day-to-day kind of thing. Like, are you a morning person or are you a night person, a night owl? Do you prefer to eat home-cooked meal, or do you prefer to eat out? Do you prefer to watch comedy or horror show? And although it seems that it's a superficial thing, why would my interviewer care about that? I would say it will definitely help you to decide, to come up with your decisions, and also to show a different side of you. So sometimes in an interview, people like maybe like a hiring manager will ask, oh, what do you do in your free time? If let's say for myself, I used to dance in the university, and that could be something that the hiring manager also likes, and that will be a plus point for me. Even if it's not, they will see how, oh, I have a hobby, I have a strong preference in something, and like they will see you as someone who is like committed, or it's just simply they will remember you in different ways from other candidates. Yeah, so and also preference, actually I feel that it's rooted from the next P, which is principles. So what is principles? I would say it's more of like your values and beliefs. So values can be things like, I value honesty, commitment, reliability, work-life balance, and family. So these values should be something that's very important to you, and you will not compensate it for other things. So if, let's say, you value honesty, you can actually look for companies who also value integrity and all of this that aligns with your values. And then there's also beliefs that is more like certain ideas that you hold to be true. For example, like, gender equality, or like sustainability, or even the world's peace. You can think about that and what are really your principles. And from there, you can think of what is the must-have for your future job, for your future employer, and what can be compensated. Let's say you are actually okay with companies who are not so green, like they are not so big on sustainability, as long as they are supportive of gender equality. So they support feminists and all this movement. So that is also a thing that a lot of companies these days are focusing on. Yeah, and then our last one is about passion. So passion is a very interesting aspect to me, because you heard a lot like, oh, you should follow your passion, you should work in a sector that you are passionate about. But if, let's say, coming back to my example, that I used to dance in university, and I bet a lot of my dance friends think, oh, dance is my passion. But how am I going to make a lot of money that my parents won't scold me if I become a dancer? So your passion, I would say your passion is not limited to just one thing. And there's this quote that I heard before, that you don't follow your passion, but you let your passion follows you as you work to get good, to be something who is stronger in certain aspects or like industries. So passion is basically what you like or like what you don't like. You can find out more by knowing what you don't like, something that you enjoy doing, something that you're curious about. And well, for myself, I'm passionate about developing people, and hence I enter a career in a HR industry. And even if your passion changed, it's okay. But as long as at that point of time when you are going for interview, finding jobs, you know what you like and what you want to do at that moment. And even if it changed after you get into that job, it's fine as well. Because I would say passion is for a moment. Some people might not agree, but that's what I believe in. Yeah, so after you understand about yourself, we'll move on to the next slide. That is understanding about what you are applying for. So there are a lot of different aspects here. Firstly, like company background, then there's a job description, interviewer's background, and lastly is like anticipating certain questions. If you have any questions specifically for any of it, you can just ask at the chat box, but I will just briefly go through for this portion. So first of all, you can and you should definitely research about the company. So a lot of information are available online. You can just Google, find their website, look at their business models, what are they selling, what kind of services they are doing, then their values, which is very important, especially for management associate program. Because in such a structured program, they emphasize a lot on the company values. Yeah, I mean, this is not 100% true kind of theory, but it's just something that I came up with and what I saw as I entered the workforce. And then also about the annual report. So annual report is good for you to know whether this company is going to work out for the next 5 or 10 years, and also to understand their profit and loss structure, like what kind of different businesses they have as well, if it's like a big company with subsidiaries and all. And yeah, so knowing more is definitely better than less. And especially if you're going for case studies that talk about a company's annual report is a very good start for you. And then there's about a JD that I'm sure you guys have seen before you apply all the responsibilities and the requirements. Try to really understand what they're looking for and cater all your answers towards that direction. Yeah, and then the interviewer's background, I think this is more of a plus point, and I would say it's more needed when it's at the later stage, like if you're interviewing with the manager, not with the HR. You can find out more where did they go for university, and then you can probably, oh, I also came from the university, or something like if you see an interesting post that they put up there, you can actually start a conversation in your interview. And yeah, it will make you feel more confident as well when you know who are you talking to. And then the last one about anticipating questions. This day, Glassdoor has been very helpful to all future employees in revealing a lot of questions that people asked. I think that's a very good source, and you guys should make use of it. You can just find out, especially for like a talent management associate program that happens every year. Sometimes they might not change the question, and I actually looked out at that segment as well before, and it was pretty useful for my interviews. So you should definitely go check it out, the kind of questions that they will ask. Then you can help to prepare beforehand. Yeah, and then after knowing all this, you should match to what you understand about yourself. So after knowing what is your preference, what is your personality, principles, and passion, then you can answer to all these questions with confidence. And the recruiters or whoever interviewing you will know that this person knows what they want and they are very driven, or like, yeah, you will just simply be more convincing. Yeah, so let's move on to the next section, which, so following up with the first question I've thrown to you guys, I will actually categorize them to these three different categories. First of all, it's like, tell me about yourself. That is more like introductory. It's typically just an icebreaker. So I would say keep it at most to be 1 minute. There was one time that I interviewed a candidate and he or she talked about his introduction for like probably 5 or 7 minutes. And it was quite a struggle. I was like, should I cut him or her off? But okay, I just let it be. I'll just like adjust my future questions if he or she has already answered that. But really, I think 1 minute is good enough. Keep it short and leave that impression that if they are interested more, they will ask after that. Yeah, and then there is the behavioral or competency-based kind of questions. So questions like what are some challenges that you face? Tell me about a time when you failed. It's basically testing on competencies. It's typically a situational kind of questions, and you can prepare it beforehand because the questions are quite similar, and I would say for the internship roles, they are testing on similar things as well. That is not too specific on the like a technical kind of questions that I will cover later on. So some of the competencies that is commonly measured is like leadership, critical thinking, or like stress management, or like how you bounce back from a failure. Like the question, tell me about a time that you failed, that you don't only tell the time that you fail, but you also talk about how you overcome it and how you come back and like eventually succeed if you do. And then the last one about the technical or case study kind of questions is really testing on your industrial knowledge or your expertise. And then typically how you can prepare for that is research and practice a lot. If it's a coding question, you have to practice your coding. If it's about, let's say, marketing strategies on the, I don't know, maybe in terms of social media, then you research about social media strategies that other companies did. And also coming back to the two questions that I mentioned earlier, I would say it falls under the behavioral or type of questions. And why it became one of my favorite questions is because I figured out, like after I got in for that role, I asked my supervisor why he asked me those two questions. And surprisingly, my question was actually what got me into the job. like one of the factors. And it really tests on how well I know yourself, and he's testing on like my drive, my attitude on things that I don't like, and what kind of aspects motivate me to work. That is the what is your favorite moment part. And so I think this type of questions is not always scary. It's not always about things like, oh, what would you do in the next 5 years? That is, I would say it's quite scary because I have to think ahead for 5 years, and that's a long time. And I think even this kind of simple questions can actually test on your behavior or competencies. Yep. So yeah, maybe I'll move on to the next slide. The third one, during the interview itself, how you can prepare yourself. For physical interviews, I think most of you guys probably know that you should arrive early, spare like at least 10 minutes. If it's a place that you have never been before, you can come as early as 30 minutes before. It's always better to be early. And dress for success. So dress up according to what the interviewer has informed you. If they do, if they don't, you can just wear formal. That is the safest way. But of course, like for certain companies, like tech companies, generally we are more chill. You can wear like smart casual as long as you are dressed up properly. You don't look like you just woke up or like just went for a run. That is fine. And then thirdly is about body language. It's something that a lot of people are not aware of. So I would say if you want to pay attention to your body language, you can either record yourself from like, at the corner of the room, or you practice it with your friends. When you are interviewing, do you actually fidget a lot? Do you shake your legs? Do you often look away from the interviewer? Because that is also a sign that you are actually very stressed that, oh, I can't wait for this interview to end. It's like, where is the drive in this candidate? Yeah, those kind of like minute details we actually pay attention to. And then for virtual, because nowadays it's probably like a Zoom kind of session, additional things that you should take note of is like internet connection. You should probably test out the location that you'll be interviewing in. And then there's also about the background noise. There was one time I was interviewing a candidate. There was super heavy rain. I understand that it can't be helped. We don't know when will it rain, but it was, I couldn't really hear what he or she was saying at certain point of time. And then, after a few times asking like, oh, sorry, can you repeat what your answer is? I'll get tired and then I'll be like, it's okay. I think overall, I think she's okay, but I don't know, she could be better. Yeah. Try to eliminate that as much as possible. And lastly, use laptop, not your mobile phone. If it's a video interview, it's very important because mobile phone, there's a lot of distraction. Whenever it vibrates, I can actually hear the vibration. And then, in terms of camera angle, it's much better when we see each other from a laptop camera. So yeah, those are just some of the tips for what you can do during the interview itself. And lastly, in terms of certain best practices, this is just a quick tips for you guys, what you can take away. When you're answering questions, especially for the behavioral kind of questions, you can probably use this STAR method, which is a situation, task, action, and results kind of framework to structure your answers. So if you're preparing for certain questions, you can use this as a guide. And secondly, make sure to not speak of past employers in not a very positive way. And then thirdly, make sure that your answers is to the point. Don't spend too long just answering about a question. And then if you need to clarify, don't be shy to ask. It's better to ask back, may I clarify that your question is this, by rephrasing it. It will actually help you to, take some time to think about your answers as well. So it's like killing two birds with one stone. And then the next one is you should also ask insightful questions back. So this is definitely something you can prepare. Use the same set of questions whenever I go for like job interview after I graduated. And there's this one question that I like, it's like, how do you think, like after interviewing with me, is there any other skills or competencies that you felt I am lacking based on our conversation? So you can actually get an instant feedback out of that interview, because if you fail, you probably will never talk with this person. While at the same time, if you actually have that skill or competencies, you can add on to mention that you actually demonstrated it before. Yeah. And then the last one is be yourself and be honest. Honesty is always the best policy. So don't make up the things that you have never done before, because recruiters can tell that as well. Yeah, I think that's all for my session. Yeah, and you can send in any questions later on for the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Astrina. That's really very insightful, and I really can testify to like your last portion of what question to ask your future employers. Because personally, I also use the same question that you asked, like based on our interview, what do you think of me? Like, do you think I'm a suitable candidate for this? If not, what's lacking of me? And I always get a lot of constructive feedback from the employers, just because they also want us to succeed as much as we want ourselves to succeed. So you have to believe that we have like mutual interests to proceed together, like forward. It's not they're trying to fail me, or like I'm trying to like be the best of everyone. It's just we need to know what are our weaknesses and whether it is still acceptable to become like a better fit for the company. So it's a very good process to get instant feedbacks right on the spot. And yeah, I think we are just right on time. I'm gonna quickly move to the next section, which is to introduce, essentially to encourage all of you to take on the next steps, right? We have shared with you all these amazing tips, the tricks, the advice, and the insights to LinkedIn connections, to building your resume, to actually practice for your interviews. But this is the time for you to start doing it first. So the first step is gonna be LinkedIn. So I encourage all of you after this event, whether it's today, whether it's like tomorrow morning, just feel free to go on LinkedIn, connect with all of us, all these amazing speakers here. We are very happy to like connect with you and help you along the process as well. Treat us like one of you, like we're just another young professional. We're trying to help you out there as well. Connect with us, share what you have learned today on LinkedIn, because all of us combined, we have like thousands of followers. We want to help spread your word and help you to get the attention of your future recruiter, like future employers. Help us to help you as well. So share your insights, share your learning experience today, and don't forget to like connect with us on LinkedIn and tag us on Tech Tribe. So before we move on to the Q&A session, I got a tip from Tasha and Xingyu that we want to take a group photo first before everyone runs away for the Q&A session. So please switch on your camera wherever you are. Do mute yourself for now first. Switch on your camera, and Xingyu or Tasha will just cue us to take the photo together.
Yeah, please do turn on your camera right now. We'll proceed into the session to take photos. Wait, sorry, I'm a bit nervous. I think I have to stop sharing your screen first, because I can't make it into like the full screen, you know, like the panel for everybody to be on screen. So if you don't mind, thank you very much. Okay, please turn on your cameras and please hold your smiles. On the count of 3, I will screenshots. Please hold. Okay, wait, how do I do this? Thank you. Okay, please hold your smile. Okay, good. We're done with the photo taking session. So thank you so much to the speakers for sharing today. So we're moving the Q&A session right now. Please do raise your hand in the chat if you would like to ask a question in person, or you can also alternatively send your questions in the chat. Yeah. Is there anybody who would like to start the game rolling? Okay.
Tasha, do you mind just like asking us the question? Because I know there are like a few in the chat box. You can start with that first, and then Astrina, Sevri, and Trivida, feel free to unmute yourself so that we can just answer the questions.
Sure, sure. So one of the questions from the chat box is from Kaiji. It seems like adding crucial details, example data, is important for a resume, but is it being too wordy, potentially off-putting as well?
Yep. Sorry, I actually answered this privately to him or her. Yeah, well, basically, as long as you answer it in a very concise manner, so making sure you write it in the P method or the STAR method, and really trying to get that into one single sentence. Yeah, and when you're writing it, always remember your audience, who's reading this, what kind of role is it for. So if you're applying to a marketing role, then let's say it's like a social media manager role and you're measured against certain metrics such as engagement rate or click-through rates or stuff like that. You want to make sure you highlight those key ones. The other stuff like viewership or so, they matter, but you can always elaborate about that more during your interview. So you want to highlight those key ones.
Okay, so from what I gather is that just highlight your key skills from the key metrics. That would be a very good indication of your abilities. So I was thinking, what about something that is more general, like your duties there, your responsibilities there? Because you do say that we need to cover it briefly, right? But how much would it be, too much or too wordy kind of thing?
I'll pop it back to Astrina to answer that, since you're the ones who are looking at CVs for 20 seconds.
I would say